Hello, good people of the internet. Welcome to part 3 of Beyond Politics, a 4 part series by myself, Chetan Narang, and Rocco Jarman from Eyes Wide Open Life. Parts 1 and 2 of this series featured why we need to game change politics and how we landed in the current situation we are in right now. If you haven't gone through those two videos yet, I would highly recommend checking them out before diving into this video. If you have checked out those videos previously, it might be a good idea to quickly loop through them to actually remind yourself of what they feature. Today's conversation is around what we can do as individuals and as a society to actually steer ourselves towards the growth path that we really want for ourselves. And like all of this series, this transcends the topic of politics, honestly. This applies to all avenues where human beings interact and coordinate, and like I've always mentioned, try to coordinate. Politics, religions, business, society, community, marriages, relationships, jobs, all the rest of them. This is what is fundamentally important to all of these interactions. So, along those lines, I present to you part 3 of Beyond Politics, our 4 part series, a discussion on what we can do as individuals and as a collective to actually steer ourselves towards the growth path we are destined for. Like this video if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and with an open mind and an open heart, let's get into it.
One of the things we wanted to talk about was um, the first human beings banded together. They made the jump from I to we. Right?
Yeah.
And then they became family troops, and then they became tribes. Tribes was when we broke out of the family thing and we adopted a next paradigm. And that paradigm didn't mean that our tribe was going to defeat the rest of the world. It was just a little blip in history, right? All that tribe had to do was be successful. And to be successful meant they had to be competitive, they had to be fit, they had to be adapted, they had to be integrated with their environment. And the ones that integrated well, their psychology, their stories, their habits became the platform on which the next success was made. And so we evolved from simplicity to complexity, all the way from tribes to cities, to countries, to, and now,
countries.
right. But at every point in time, those things had their limit. The paradigm couldn't carry the human race forward with the complexity that they had generated in their getting it right.
Yes.
Now we are at that threshold again. We need to make another paradigm shift. We need to drop the country and the religion and start figuring out we're one we. And if we don't make it work, everything that we think is so important now is daft. It's like some point in time there were two chiefs that were arguing about a different picky-wacky mud god. And this one wanted the spears to be shaped like that, and that one wanted this. And no one cares today because the context of what you shape your spears like or which wood you use is so redundant to us. What was profound to them has become irrelevant even because we're always evolving and emerging. Now, the threshold in front of us, the thing that's preventing us from moving from this chamber of existence into the next one, is the same threshold that humans have been facing ever since we were human beings. At some point in time, somebody had a vision, a violent vision, unfortunately, to create a nation out of many tribes. And every single tribe resisted the change. That's why it was so bloody. When a caterpillar becomes a butterfly, it dissolves, right? But the immune system of the caterpillar actually actively fights the transformation change by treating the emerging butterfly cells as infections. Right, but eventually the butterfly emerges, and that's the symbol of transcendence. Now, that symbol is in our stories and in our psychologies, and as Terence McKenna and Alan Watts and Joseph Campbell and Carl Jung would have pointed out, what we need to decode the meaning of that, because that's the direction we need to follow, which means we need to dissolve our certainty. We're the caterpillar eating our way towards We're eating a whole environment up. Now we're making a matrix for ourselves. This reality we've created is our own matrix, our own hell. We helped create this hell. That's our cocoon. And the only way we get out of this cocoon is by transcending our current paradigm. But you'll notice that our caterpillar cells are attacking our butterfly cells. We are
And
at
Rocco,
war. Yes.
When you were saying that, the example of the caterpillar and the butterfly,
Yes.
it's so relevant to the human condition.
Completely.
But there is one key difference which
Yes.
we alluded to when we discussed
Yes.
emergence in a first call, which
The
is
butterfly only gets one go at it. Our human species can have another go at this every few hundred years. And you as a human being actualizing can have a go at this every time you level up. Yes.
Yes. And at one level, when I'm looking at it, I can feel that whatever is happening in the butterfly and the caterpillar, it's all nature. It's
all
all going to
nature.
happen via a natural process.
Yes.
But for human beings, there is this conscious element involved.
Yes.
And now, if we do not take care of that, we're going to disintegrate, which is what we're seeing, which is why you are able to say so articulatively that this is a moment in time to actually do this because of the overwhelm that we feel.
Yes.
We are at a stage in our evolution where it's so complex right now that you cannot live with the paradigms that we have helped create. And if you don't transcend them, if you don't consciously transcend them,
if you're not part of the solution, you are invariably part of the
problem.
The problem.
Right? Yes. And the problem is, oh, Rocco, then in some sense, if you tie
problem
it up with
is ignorance
and
looking back for answers to how to navigate a moment we've never experienced. We're afraid of stepping forward because we haven't made peace. We can't let go of the griefs and the grievances and the suffering behind us, and nor should we. Because when we do step forward, we need to step forward with the integrated essence of the lessons that helped bring us to this point. And the only way we do that is to start listening to each other's stories, because nobody arrives at their political mistrusts dishonestly. They arrive because they are attached to an injury which is true in the world. Now, the fact that two injuries are happening at the same time doesn't make one of them invalid. It makes them both valid. They just require different forms of love and different forms of treatment. And if you listen carefully, you will realize that what you think is an argument against the other is actually a failure to understand what they care about. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't bad faith actors on either side of either camp. It means you need to treat them as NPCs, as non-player characters, as something generated by the trauma that we're helping cause. They're just functions of the illness, right? You've got to start focusing on the cure, which is harmony and resonance with other people. You want to stop being triggered. You want to stop arguing the fringe because there is no argument. They're thriving on argument. If you stop arguing, they'll go away and find someone else to bother. You just stop feeding the parasite.
And none of what you said over the last minute or so is actually to gaslight what you are feeling, right?
No, not at all. You need to interrogate what you're feeling very honestly and vulnerably, because you need to figure out what the source of your care is. Half of it you will find is your own psychological self-abandonment that you are projecting onto the world. And the other half is a sense of tragedy or injustice that is being perpetuated. But I challenge you to look at this crusade that you think you're holding a line for and realizing how many other things you are blind to in your absolute adamance that this is the most important thing. And once we can just realize that we've got a lot to grieve and a lot to heal, so much, but that process can only begin when the knives go down. You cannot heal while you're slashing and nursing wounds and blaming somebody else for it. So you need, you know, it sounds spiritual, but there's no other way through that door. You're going to have to start making peace with your own psychology and your own story and your own tragedies that you've faced in your life and the things that have been taken away from you. And, you know, I'm going to read something, if I may.
Sure. Yeah.
It's
And then I have some questions for you, Rocco.
Yeah, I want to read this quick, man. It says,
Yeah.
my heart is wisest. My heart is wisest. I did not choose the shape of my heart. It was sculpted by life. I did not determine its lines, nor its depths, nor the shape of its dearest cares and wounds. And therefore, I cannot choose what I want or how I love. To deny my griefs is to deny my joys. To deny my defeat is to deny the triumph of life itself and the persistence of my heart. To deny the valley is to rob the mountain of its full height, and my heart is both, and I am simply its horizon. My heart just wants what it wants, and I can do no other than love the way I love. All I can do is feel, and that is what my heart is for. That is what life is, and that is what I'm for. I'm for life. All I can choose is whether I am present. All I can choose is whether I am present, and I can name that choice devotion and wisdom. And there I find my wisdom and my meaning, my purpose and my courage. There I find my heart. There is life, and there I find me. And, you know, Joseph Campbell said, I don't believe people are looking for the meaning of life as much as they are looking for the experience of being alive. And it's both, right? You know, one of the meanings is to pursue potential. And the other one is just this connecting with the feeling of being alive.
Yeah.
But you can only feel vital when you feel that things are going right. And the easiest way to let things go right is to become part of the solution. Stop blaming the they. Just pick up the part that you can start cleaning up, make the world beautiful in your neck of the woods, clean your conversation up, make your bed, sort your shit out, fix your relationships in your family and in your home, make a better relationship with yourself, begin showing yourself the self-care that you would appreciate others showing you, you know, become your own leader, your own best friend, reparent yourself. Because the more people that can do that, the more we can invest in the things that make us feel alive. And the more we can explore our potential. And our potential is either fighting each other as we fall into the same ditch, or breaking out into the stars and creating, you know, utopian futures for ourselves or possibilities for ourselves. Now, utopia isn't a destination, it's a vector. It's a vector that you never stop, you never arrive there. Otherwise, it's not utopia, it's hell. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so that poem is about just half of it is just letting yourself feel what you feel and be who you are, and find better language and better courage inside yourself to articulate that and to accept it about yourself. Yeah. So half of this wisdom is wisdom and philosophy and intelligence and logic and reason, but the other half is, it is a kind of spiritual message, because that is what we're for. We're here to have both, you know?
Yeah. And you know, when you were reading that, Rocco, I was trying to tie it up with the conversation we were having. And when you said, let yourself feel what you're feeling completely, I was also thinking that all of what you're saying is not just true for the one who's reading this poem or listening to this poem. It's true for the ones you love. It's true for the ones you hate. It's true for the ones you don't care about. It's true
Exactly.
for every single human being.
Yes.
And it's true for the left when the right is reading it. It's true for the right when the left is reading it.
Yes. The only real thing is your feelings. But the story, as per that Truman Show episode, is at least half of that story is contrived. And half of that contrival is ignorance. You know, how can you clarify your ignorance? You can't know what you don't know, but you can at least begin admitting that you don't know what you don't know. And just that admittance means that you're creating a space in your mind that you know you don't have an answer for, so that when you encounter things, you look at things with curiosity to try and understand more instead of condemnation, to try and make sure which they can I shift the blame onto so I don't have to worry about this myself.
And one more thing, Rocco, there was this conversation I was having with a guy who was sort of triggered with what I had shared recently. And his idea was, he said that, why do you expect me to compromise and why do you want me to do all the mature work
I don't.
when the other side is not?
I
When the
don't
other side
expect you to. I expect a child to answer exactly that way. But let me tell you how I expect an adult to answer. How can I help? How can I help? And is my help helping?
Wow. Yes.
Because I'm helping by letting people know the opinion. I'm sharing this. I'm telling them that they shouldn't this. But yes, but is your help helping? And those are the questions adults ask themselves. And the thing is not about who is going to be disempowered by showing leadership. You cannot be disempowered by showing leadership. You are empowering people by showing leadership. You take the possibility of being disempowered off the table by stepping up as a leader. But a child doesn't answer that because they are still worried about the wound. What's wrong with me? Why have I not been granted permission into the adult club? Life is so unfair. That's a rite of passage we all have to experience. And it's not your fault that you haven't been initiated into the adult club where you feel responsible for the stewardship and the custodianship of this humanity that we share, and that it isn't in the kind of place where you actually want initiation or membership because it looks like it's a bit of a mess. So I don't blame you for feeling that way, but we can all actually take that ticket that you've got and say, yeah, fuck you, why should I do it? Okay, but then the golden rule says, do unto others as you would have done unto you, which means, are you happy that everybody else also has that, why should I do it first? And if you're not happy with that response, the only sane course of action, the only way you can preserve your own integrity and dignity really is by saying, well, no one else is coming. If I can't do it first, where do I get off saying that it's worth doing? Because half of my victim complex is because why should I? That's how victims talk as well. Teenagers talk like that because they're entitled. But one of the reasons that they're entitled is they don't understand the cost of the gift. They don't understand how difficult it is to be an adult and to try something and fail and be held accountable for that failure. It's very hard, especially when everybody else is out to shit on you, not out to see the best in you. And people, there's another 0.5% of the population that are waiting for me to make a mistake so they can use this as a point scoring exercise. We're so cynical. We're so cynical. And we didn't arrive at our mistrust dishonestly. This man that asks you this question didn't arrive at his mistrust dishonestly. But, psychologically and spiritually, you're either a teenager or you're an adult. And a teenager asks that kind of question. An adult asks that kind of question, but doesn't just go like this, waiting for the answer. They ask that kind of question and wonder, if somebody asked me that question, how would I answer them? What is the answer? If somebody ever gives me an answer to that question, how will I know I actually agree or disagree if I hadn't followed it through? That's what it means to be an adult. It means to say, I don't know the answer, but I can't sit here and do nothing, even for myself. Even for myself. Profound, isn't it?
Yes. So Rocco, I want to tie it back to, I'm gonna limit what we talked about through the lens of politics now. Okay. So
yeah, because it's the hottest topic. Let's do it. Yeah.
So we have talked about, in part 1 of our video, we talked about how if you are on one side of the scale, able to choose a side easily, and even if you're not able to choose easily, but you're choosing one of the two sides, it's lesser of the two evils, but it's still an evil.
So the problem is not unifying.
So it's still a problem to be solved. And we discussed how you have to transcend your left versus right, the red versus blue, to actually reach a solution. Now let's talk about the practical aspects of what we just discussed. We've talked about what an individual
Right. We talked about the science of it. Now let's talk about how to implement this.
Yes, exactly. So what would an implementation look like? So I want to ask from two perspectives, Rocco.
Yeah.
One perspective will be a person who is going to do his or her day job and is doing whatever they're doing to care for their family, etc. But they still want to vote and they still want to, participate in the democracy or
They
something.
want to be a citizen.
They want to be a citizen. And then there's another perspective from someone who actually wants to actively take part in the solution.
Activist of some sort, an activist or a solution maker or an engineer, or some part of their craft and calling is devoted to working on what they think is most meaningful.
In terms of politics, government,
yeah, but I mean
taking
let's just say that answer that I gave you is true, and then of that set, there's a subset that are motivated politically.
Exactly.
Right.
So in terms of politics, there's always going to be people who will just vote, but they want to vote well. They want to be good citizens.
Yes.
And then there's a section of the population who right now might be acting out of fear, and they're not really delving into politics or government work actively out of fear or out of whatever. They have commitments to their jobs and whatnot, but they want to do it. But they don't see a path forward. They don't see how they can actually make a change, because we are all stuck in this paradigm, and practically everyone is too little to actually go up against this big ass machinery of government.
Beautiful question. Right? So how do you transcend a paradigm? How do you transcend paradox?
Yes.
Let me ask you that.
How do you transcend a paradox?
Yes. So if the one part is pulling down and the other part is pulling up, you pull forward.
And take the essence of both of them.
Yes, you pull forward. So if the pole is up or down, more up is going to cause resistance on down, and more down is going to cause resistance on up. That's physics. There's no one of those two ways, but you can't just sit in the center like a Buddhist and do this. You have to pull forward. If the poles are left and right, you pull up, you rise. If whatever you do has to be orthogonal or perpendicular to the pole. You can't use politics to solve politics. The disease is politics. Now what you've got is a machine that is sustained by polarization. It's not designed to solve social problems. It's designed to keep fighting. To self-energize. That's what it's designed to do.
Well, Rocco, that's also sort of an extreme opinion, because it's not like they are not solving any problem at all.
Oh, sorry. The current iteration is wired and defined that way. So politics, there will always be politics. In other words, applying philosophy and wisdom to statecraft and social management, that's not politics. That's something else. Politics is the lawyering of determining how policy is made, what rules you're going to write. It's not saying why. The argument is never, the politicians are saying what they believe in, but you don't know what they believe in because they make votes behind closed doors. The language was never deep enough to explain how they were going to implement your confidence or your vote. Because that's what politics is. Politics is who's going to get elected next, who's going to pass this bill. We are completely oblivious and blind to the bill that's being passed and how it actually affects us. That is not politics. That's legislation. Correct. Legislation solves problems. Politics is the tug of war to argue which law should be made. It's not solving any problems. It's not addressing any problems. It's pretending to address problems to get the vote, ostensibly to do the right thing.
But then, Rocco, the ones who will win the tug of war actually get to decide which legislation they will
For
pass and
this
what not.
argument, empowering the next team to fight harder to get a kidney punch in their round. And it's always just it's designed to keep going like this. That is the majority of energy, and energy capture is not on the progress of society. So no one's winning from that. The only thing that's winning from that is social media sales and politicians. The politics as a business is the winner. Not the people who vote for them. Because if you are more concerned about people, you can just look at the airtime on television or radio. All of the energy, all of the argument, all of the attention that's been invested, this much is about what's going to happen, how people will be treated. And this much is about what the character flaws of each other are, and that is a soap opera. This is not okay. Right.
I agree, Rocco. Now, I wanna say that I want to solve the problem. I mean, I want to.
Sure.
I want to clean
We
up
were
this
getting there.
mess.
We were getting there, right? So remember, I said you've got two polarities. How you do it? You've got elastic, and you're pulling the elastic like this.
Yeah.
You pull it forward, right? But it's not going to. If you let it go, it's going to do this, right? So you have to tease it forward like this in increments, and you have to be controlled, and you have to make sure you're adjusting your grip strength, your grasp, and your torsion and your angle, and you can't just yank it, yeah, because that's not harmonious. It'll break everything. And you don't want to break things. You want to steer it. And so the best way to steer this is from the center, orthogonal to the two polarities. You can't solve politics with politics. You've got to find something else in the kit bag that we've got that pulls in an orthogonal direction that's not affected by the polarity of politics. So what do people care about? They care about a future, a story, something, a dream that they can all share in. So when we were sending people to the moon, or if there's a comet in the sky, or anything that is not about this, it becomes a this, and then everyone can look towards the star in the sky, or the aurora borealis, or all we need is something that can draw our attention, that's more nourishing to the soul, that we actually enjoy more if we're honest with ourselves. We just don't have a basis for comparison because we're so captured in all of this. So my idea of how you pull out of this is through storytelling and the art and craft of mythos, and giving people language to better describe what's happening, give them a story, a dream, a vision of the future that we can attach to, that we can be part of, that the possibilities of that tapestry, the threads are lying in front of us at the moment, and we can start weaving them, and they are the threads of our own life and our own intentionality and our own. Now, all we need is a dreamer to dream a dream and share the dream, and then other people go, you know what? I like that dream. That's a dream that I would like to dream, because I didn't have the imagination to dream that dream. Now that I can dream that dream and I can think it's possible, I want to invest my energy and my attention in my life. Like, how can I get there? How can we get there? Even if the only way I can get there is now spending more of my energy on a YouTube channel that discusses that topic, that possibility, that creates groups of practice, that we don't know the answer to that question, Chetan, but we need to be having those conversations to find out the answers to those questions. And there isn't only going to be one answer. There's many ways in which we can capture the human spirit and the human imagination and the human dream to say, oh, yes, I want to do that. There's many ways we can do that, and none of them are political. So the meaning making that we want in our lives is this. Now, the one big star in the sky that we can all follow is the star lit by the potential of our future selves. you can imagine a version of you that you would be so proud to be. And you can begin today walking that way. And you just carry that dream in your heart and you let the dream evolve and emerge as you become more wise along the road. And you'll realize what you weren't following was a star, but a kind of mirror of hope that you carry of what could be possible, you know, and all you got to do is follow your own heart. Now, any group that get together with common cause, we want to flourish, we want to survive, we want to have a better tomorrow, we want things to be good for our kids. I want to feel safe. I don't want to have to worry about guilt and shame, which means I want other people taken care of too. There's solutions for these things. They're not easy solutions in our current paradigm because our current paradigm is too small to entertain them. But that doesn't mean there's no solution. You can't reach the apple on the tree today, but the branch will grow longer and the apple will get heavier and you'll grow taller and a day will come when you can reach it. But you have to reach. You know, you don't get the garden you want from one afternoon of digging, but you don't get the garden you want without that one afternoon.
That one afternoon.
Yes, you have to start the process. We start from where we are with what we have. There's no perfect place or tools to start from. You start from where you are with what you have, but there's always a perfect time. Right now. Right now. You know, and you just ask yourself, what does love look like right now? And you keep walking that way. Just one step at a time. Yeah.
And Rocco, I feel you have nailed it, but I want to still discuss a little bit more. I want to pull you a little bit more towards it, and I will ask you something. So there is some guy who is very driven, who is called out to actually make a change in the society. And he sees that the political system, let me just talk about my country, okay? Let me just say that the political system in India is messed up. And he can see that he's called out to actually change it. And he can also see that the powers to be right now, the people who are in power right now are bad faith actors. Most of them are bad faith actors, and they are not wanting to solve it.
They're cynical.
They're cynical. But he feels that his solution can lie by actually attaching to one of the parties and trying to solve the virus from within, or creating a new political party and then trying to solve the virus from there. Now that is one version of what that person feels love looks like. You know, acting from a pure stand of love. What would you advise that person?
Okay, can you imagine a tree? So I've got a picture of a tree. I might even, on my website, I might share it. There's this tree here. There wasn't one solution that anchored this tree to the earth. There's one main one, but there's lots of smaller ones. If somebody's genuinely called to solve one of these stabilizing branches, and that's why would we stop them? If they've got, are they aligned? Have they got the right intention? Then by all means do that. So I can help people like that align to their own craft and calling through the content and the wisdom that we're going to share here, the dream, the vision, the model that I've downloaded from the universe. But happily, you know, and it's got to work for everyone. So it'll sound like good advice because a lot of people will have consensus and they'll tell you how much it means to them. That's how you know it's good advice, But the primary project for me is identifying the main branches that need to stabilize the tree. And the main one is stable mutual actualization, this common cause that we all have to grow up towards the light. So I want to, the idea that all the branches must be connected and harmonious and balanced, that central idea is what I want to champion. And then I want to pick a few of these sub-projects and throw my weight and my soul into that too, or find people who are aligned and help them understand what I know. Because that's the best way to make a whole tree. So what we're not going to do is say this is the only way. There are no right or only ways, right? There are
Yeah.
only better or worse ways.
Mm.
How do I stop sharing? There's only better or worse ways. And what we're looking for is the better ways. And this stabilizing root, it doesn't grow down into the ground forever. It grows down into the ground commensurate with how much it's trying to actualize.
Mm.
Right? And it needs to stabilize. And then it can't have that downward momentum forever. That downward momentum's got to be moderated by its lateral momentum, its ability to stabilize and integrate, and its ability to hold up the tree that it's trying to support. And then the nourishing of that tree in the sunlight that it can reach for, there's got to be integration vertically, laterally, horizontally. So whatever branch we're taking, think of this like an operating system with lots of branches that you're doing pull requests in. Whatever we think the pull request is that we think is most relevant, and we want to join that project and work agile on that. Do that as long as it's aligned with the main branch. Because that's what you would do in agile, right? And what we're missing is harmony and integration. So make sure you stay that integration for you is an ongoing parameter or ongoing concern, right? Because if everybody's doing that, it means that whatever you begin as, don't assume that your branch is going in a straight line either. It has to grow in a curve. It has to lean always towards the emerging direction that we're all, because that's what consensus and emergence is, the tree is going to keep growing bigger on top, and that means the roots need to match that, but they also need to be balanced this way. And then as it goes down, new little roots will start emerging, new branches will begin to emerge. And if we can picture that tree, that's the model of stable mutual actualization. Mutual, and stable, because otherwise, if it's not stable, it won't continue. And that's what we're trying to get this thing to do. So if the person is called to that, ask yourself, are you called to that because you understand all options and that's the one that your heart's called to the most? Or are you just lacking imagination or inspiration? Have you not been, can you not imagine of a better application of your energy and your attention to pursue meaning? Or you just not exposed to better ideas and you need some inspiration? Come here on both accounts, because we can help address the ignorance that we know about, plus we're going to be collaborating with other people that are much smarter than us in other areas. And we're going to each be trying to set out a good signal of answers that you can trust. But if you find yourself a specialist in something, then come and speak so we can solve the ignorance piece. But the alignment piece, that's your work with yourself. But the alignment has to be aligned with these principles, unfortunately. And if you think they aren't, we invite you to come and explain to us where we're ignorant. Because we're looking for the better way. And the better way is going to emerge. This is a blueprint that we're sitting with. We don't know what's going to happen. When Spotify first started building Spotify, if you look at the way it used to look a bit like iTunes. Now it's beautiful. But if somebody had explained to you what Spotify was 10 years ago, or how it's going to look, or what beauty or the beautiful interface would look like, you wouldn't understand what they're talking about. You would have no frame of reference. Your language would be too small for the territory that would still emerge. So Spotify didn't envision this future that they're having today 10 years ago. They had a lame version 1.1, but they had to go through all those iterations. But the wisdom and the experience and the user feedback and what emerged along the way in their journey was now they could envision a bigger dream, a bolder dream. Suddenly competition was coming up and the world was getting more excited. That's the nature of emergence. And the only way to do that is via agile, which says, I'm not going to make fixed determinations from here. I'm going to lean towards a direction with a few fundamental basic aims. Like, let's call our basic aim for our Spotify software: the human race has to survive, the human race has to flourish, where we are living within our means, we're not damaging the womb that we're growing in, we are processing the shames and the tragedies from the past, we're weaving them into meaning so that we don't lose those lessons. And I could just go on all day what it should look like. And then if you can enshrine that, then like you're in the club. And that's what the barrier for initiation is. It's to say you must be able to play the game this way. Why wouldn't you want to? Why wouldn't you want to? You know?
And say the two golden rules again, Rocco, because I think that is the most important thing. The golden rules of how you would act, how you should act.
What did I say earlier on? Dude, this stuff's just coming out live, yeah.
What would you wish to be done to you if the shoe was on the other side?
Right.
Because even if someone is holding on to one branch, what we're saying is not that this is wrong or this is limited and whatnot. If you're playing your part, you're playing your part along with the stable mutual acceleration that you talked about. We're all game. You should be doing that, as long as you're also following those rules.
Yes.
You know?
Yes,
right?
because stable mutual actualization is predicated on the basis that everyone has the potential to be an actualized self. And if you're not making room for that, if you're compromising them in some way, their ability for empowerment or their ability to pursue their dreams, then you're harboring the parasite side of the yin-yang equation. You are the thing that's detracting and resisting and getting something for nothing. You are receiving without giving. And this only works if there's a balance between giving and receiving. And that's not moralistic again, that's physics. The only way a dynamo keeps regenerating is life and death, giving and receiving. There has to be the Tao, there has to be harmony, there has to be resonance between the polarities, because if there isn't, there's no harmony, there's no synergy, and therefore emergence cannot continue. So I'm sorry, I didn't know what you were talking about. So the one would be, what
does love?
If the shoe was on the other foot, plus I had to suffer the consequences of decisions I'm happy making for other people.
Yeah.
And then I actually forgot the second one.
What does love look like?
Of course. What does love look like right now? Very important.
Yeah, right now. Right.
Because if what love looks like is what a 2,000-year-old book told you, they don't know what it's like right now. And what love looks like right now, if fate is always emergent, if reality is emergent, wisdom has to be emergent, and complexity is going to be emergent, which means you don't have the context to explain what's going to still emerge. So you have to keep asking yourself, what does love look like right now? Because there will come a time where it's right not to forgive someone. And then there will come a time when it's right to forgive them. And there's a time where you don't have to answer someone, you can ignore them. But it doesn't mean that there will not come a time when you owe them an explanation. There's nothing, and sometimes you can feel like you've forgiven someone something until you encounter a deeper part of that same wound. And then you sometimes have to forgive again now that you know more, and forgiveness can be progressive. And you can feel like not forgiving someone for a minute and being angry, because if you can't make allowance for that anger and make allowance for other people to have theirs too, then you again trying to hide half of your reality behind a veil, and you're not going to fully integrate because that's coming up in your subconscious anyway. So what it really speaks to is the idea that I had that, let's imagine a circuit board, and the circuit board is a metaphor for life, and there's a current running through it, and life is the current, and we're just the components. Now imagine this thing like cycling with epic hertz, and it's just this throbbing feel-good energy that's pulsing through the whole thing. And you take one of those chips and you set it to only want to receive, not to give. Then you diminish the epic flow, right? And then the ones around it cannot trust in giving and receiving because that thing just takes. So they become more discerning in their giving and receiving, which is good because now you start learning who to give to and on what basis and how much. But political empathy is the art of giving energy without the discernment of knowing to who and how much. And it's always misplaced because the actual victims of the situation is people with human suffering at the bottom of all of that. And we're sitting here bickering about whose fault it is. That is not helping them.
Exactly.
Not helping them. And, you know, what do you want to invest your energy and attention into? Yeah.
Thank you, Rocco. I love this, man.
Isn't it beautiful, man? It's the world I want to belong to, man. So in the circuit, hey, now imagine that somebody's trying to siphon energy off other chips and they're just trying to store it. What a dick move. Right? You're sitting here enjoying the benefit of the whole board, not just the chips around you. Like everything is serving everything, but somehow you feel that you deserve more. But we don't know how to discern. We don't know how to pass energy and how to deny certain kinds of energy to the right, to the wrong chip. On what basis? But you can see that this is not moralistic. This is just, it's kind of like, let's play the game. The game is, how could we make the circuit run the most effectively? It doesn't mean you can expect all the chips to behave the same way. You have to expect that some are going to lag behind for whatever reason. Now, how can we create a reality that ameliorates that and does the best that we can with what we have, instead of worrying about whose fault it is that that chip's not functioning? Can we worry about how to fix it? And can we worry about protecting ourselves in the circumstance that this is going to keep happening? And just keep asking. That's what love looks like. That question. It's not what does romantic love look like or idealistic love. That question. How do I solve this giving and receiving equation? People should be vulnerable. We have to be vulnerable, otherwise we can't actualize. People should be allowed to be angry. People should be allowed to be heartbroken. They should be allowed to have a reaction and take it back. They should be allowed to make mistakes and find a way for forgiveness. If we don't make room for that, man, like,
that's not a world you want to belong in. You
no,
don't
but
want to belong in.
how can that, there's no way that you can believe that the reality that you're existing in at the moment and the direction we're going is exciting to you. Or this prospect of recalibrating the circuit board, starting with recalibrating our own circuit and changing our algorithm about how we receive and give energy and how we participate in this project and who we want to move closer towards, on what basis, to get like a whole hub of harmony going. What kind of circles do we want to create? The main focus or cornerstone of why those circles are created cannot be more political tension. Then you're just a support group that's causing more damage every time you leave. You need people who are not, sure, be politically astute, but please do not come here politically motivated, because you can even be politically aligned as however you want. You just can't be politically motivated. You've got to be motivated by something better than politics. You've got to be motivated by a dream, by a value, by some magic thing that you want to see true in the world that you can give your life to, or give some time to, or help you make your decisions so you can just be a better citizen.
And that motivation, I think one of the key things that you can actually look for in that kind of a motivation is, what is it that can motivate the other side too, if they are playing the game by the same rules, right?
Sure. Half of the question is that, but the other half is just, what do I want? What
Yeah,
do I truly love in this world?
true.
In this
Yeah,
world, am I prepared to give some of my life up for what I love?
yeah.
And
What would I want if
just
what
what
would I
would I
want to leave
want?
for? For myself, for my children, for my
Yes,
family, because everyone
exactly.
cares for that, right? Every sane person would care for that.
Of
Right?
course.
Even if you do not want to solve the world hunger problem, you want there to be a better world for your kids because you won't be around forever.
Yeah, and then
Right?
you have to admit that there's limitations to your understanding. There
Hmm.
are going to be people cleverer than you that are better at doing certain jobs than you. And at some point in time, the only way we're going to make this work is if we can establish trust between ourselves again through alignment
Hmm. Hmm.
and through iteration. But the only way we get out of this is if we leave other people to their jobs, because if they're not having to spend 60%, 70% of their time defending what they've done and why they've done it, how effective could we be? Sports teams are able to be that because there's an assumption that they all have exactly the same goal. So how do we behave like a team? Now, political sides are not teams. They're all opportunists. And so how can that's not the best of us as a species. So you want to get into places where people are trying to act like a team. And that's basically what it means to be an adult, is to be a team player.
Yeah. Rocco, when you were saying that, I just got reminded of something that happened, I think a couple of years back or 3 years back. Have
Yeah.
you heard of this term horse trading in politics?
Yeah, go on.
I mean, at least in India, that's where I heard it the first time, that it's some parties were fighting the elections together. They had agreed that they will form a coalition government together. But then after the elections, bigger parties actually buy seats from other candidates who won the elections.
Oh,
They
gee.
literally buy. They literally buy.
Oh my
They
goodness.
pay money to these politicians
Right,
who
right,
won
right.
seats.
So that
That's
somebody
horse
can come
trading.
and grandstand some political
They can show
project.
their majority.
Yeah.
That they can show their majority and form their government. And when I first heard about it, I just heard, how can people be okay with it? How can you be okay that
It's the
the
opposite of
party just
democracy.
exactly, right? And you're here supporting a party that is doing that, and your argument is sometimes that, oh, the other party is also doing it. That's just how capitalism works. Sure, that's how capitalism works, but are you really ready to accept that? Like,
Well,
this is what it is. I mean,
well, first of all, democracy means the people have a say, but the other implication is that they know what's being asked. And in other words, they have they have a say, and the say matters. Right. But what we've got is, on that premise, there should be no other agents or agency outside the people themselves in some that are responsible for their determination.
Say that again, Rocco.
There should be no one outside of their group that's responsible for their determination. Otherwise, there's no point to democracy. We have a say, and the say matters to us, and nobody outside of this lottery that we're in, that we've joined in, gets to say, take our resources, or say what we can and cannot do, or otherwise there's no point to the democracy, because democracy is distributed sovereignty. Because we realize that we're responsible for more than ourselves. We're responsible for our state, and how I'm going to be responsible for my state is to vote and lean for certain outcomes because I think that's the best answer. Right. Which means my say has to matter proportionately to my contribution as a person, and my form of contribution can't disenfranchise somebody else. In other words, if I'm an apple grower and I make legislation for apple growers that gives me a different life to somebody else, that's not democracy. I'm using the weapon. I'm weaponizing the deal that I'm making with everyone, and I'm using it for my own benefit. It's antithetical, right?
And that's so
Yeah, well,
so
hold on,
true
hold
to
on.
what actually happens.
Yes.
Go on.
And yeah, okay, go.
No. I was saying that what you've just mentioned, the example of the apple grower using his power, his time and power to actually make decisions for more apple growers and not considering the other plantations and whatnot. That's actually what happens practically
Correct.
in the democracy game. That's what
Correct.
happens in
It
almost every
starts off
nation.
as a help, like harmless little, 1%, 2% here. But when you realize that there's actually two kinds of erosion that have already happened. The one erosion, and I'm talking both commercial, the one erosion is lobbyists. In other words, where decision makers and legislatures are actually viable behind the scenes just so that they vote a certain way on issues. The other way is to outright buy a seat. Right. And then the third way is to ignore the politicians and use corporate influence to bamboozle a community, to get them to allow a factory or to, whatever. So there's all these ways that our sovereignty is being eroded, and we're participating in that erosion on the basis that our enemies are doing it too.
Yeah.
That's insane. So I'm not saying that's an insult. I'm saying that is the definition of insanity. It's you are so disconnected from your own welfare that you will allow harm to be done to you as long as because all the harm being done, somebody else has half the culpability, and there's no ways you're taking it. I mean, it's like the story of Solomon. Two women both come in front of the king, and they say, "This baby is my baby." And so Solomon takes a sword from his soldier, and he says to the soldier, "I want you to cut that baby in half and give each mother one half." And the one woman breaks down and sobs. And Solomon puts the other woman in chains and gives the woman who cried the baby. And she says, "Lord, why did you do that?" He said, "Well, I knew immediately that the one who didn't want to make the 50-50 cut was the one who actually cared about the outcome." And what we're all prepared to do is we will happily see the baby cut in half, just so long as we don't get less than half. And the one who cried and said, "No, let the other woman have the child," would rather, and then the woman who got the child said, "You see, I told you it was mine." And he goes, No, you're the criminal, because the woman who would rather see the child alive is the mother. Now, if you truly care about your society and your environment and your future, there's no version of this where you want the baby cut in half. And you're now standing before the king, and it's a metaphor. The king is the present moment, and now the judgment is going to come. And what you are saying is that you're the woman holding the baby and now think that you've won, where the king's actually going to chop your head off because he knows you're a fucking liar, because the only reason for doing it was spite. And you were making a shitty claim to begin with. Now, that doesn't mean that we're all motivated that way, but in that story, you're definitely not the mom who made the sacrifice out of love. So those are your options. They're not great, but basically we have to choose a camp. And not one single person listens to that story and says, maybe I can't relate to that because I'm not that wicked, and I don't even think I'm that courageous as that mother. I would be stuck, That's true for many of us. But you know what we can definitely not argue about is which one of those to be wanted to come good in the story.
Yeah.
Now, can we at least agree on that? Because if we can agree on that, we know what kind of people we want to become. And we know what kind of people we have to be. And we know what kind of people we can't be like. And there's 1,000 stories like this that's going to make you confront and say, geez, how am I actually in this? I don't identify with the villain, but I can't really pretend to have the courage of the hero in that story.
What a beautiful way to end this, Rocco. I love the story, man. Wow.
I think we've tied a bow on it now, you know? I just want to say to anybody listening, when Chetan and I tie a bow on something, that doesn't mean it's the end of the story. It means this is a workable packet of download. You can make sense of this and you can run with this. Is this going to evolve and get more nuance over time? I hope so. I really hope so. So if you want to be part of this conversation and you want to extend this conversation, come in on this level, come in with recommendations, come in with how we can do it, not all your reasons why we can't. Because as right as you might be, it's not helping our project. Remember, those were the two questions we asked. What can I do to help? How can I help? And is my help helping? You know? So
that's a brilliant note to end on, Rocco. I love this. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you for staying with us till here. I genuinely feel that today's video and the two previous videos in this series are game-changing stuff that can actually provide a real shift in the human consciousness and take us towards the heights that we are really genuinely destined for. Part 4 of this series will be where I provide a summary of what these three videos have been about. What can be your key takeaways from it? It comes out next week, that is, if you're watching this real time. If you're watching this in the future already, part 4 might have already also released, would be appearing on your screen right now, or would be available in the links down below in the description. I hope to see you in the playground with the same open mind and the same open heart. That said, if you're also interested in furthering this conversation with us, make sure you reach out to us. All the links to reach out to us are available down below in the description of this video. I hope to see you in the playground soon. Let's change the game together. Until next time, peace out.